Just let me get it on. All right, we're recording. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on today's webinar. I'm pretty excited about this. Today's the start of a new journey for ACS Queensland, and today we've got Victor Vicario from ARC, a new hardware incubator slash accelerator in the Valley here. And just before we pass over to Victor to see the presentation, I just want to let everyone know we've actually partnered with ARC for the next 12 months here in Queensland, and the focus of this partnership is to really identify skills needs for the startup community. We've got a lot of significant tech talent with our member base here in Queensland, and how we can connect and support this startup ecosystem is highly important for future Australia's digital economy, and how we can grow jobs, grow skills and retain IP here in Australia. Some of the other areas we're working on is to engage students with STEM and with some of the work coming out of Victor's startup space, as well as in general just to see how we can grow this ecosystem on a local level. If anyone's interested in launching a product, if anyone's got an idea for a product, even inclination for a product, this is absolutely your opportunity to make that come to life. And with Victor's experience, his team and the facilities at ARC, I don't think you've got a better opportunity. Vice versa, if you're keen to get involved and look at how you can contribute skills-wise to the partnership here with ARC, please reach out at some stage, but we'll touch on that a little bit more. But really today it's about how we can discuss and Victor's really going to share how the best approach to launching a startup, what are the steps involved. For me, it's a little bit unfamiliar, and I think for some members there's some unfamiliarity around how they would take those steps, and today that's what it's about, is to really unpack that. So mate, over to you, Victor, and everyone, as always, send through your questions through the Q&A. Now's your opportunity to really get your questions answered. So Victor, mate, over to you, and thanks for your time.
Awesome. Well, thank you for organizing this. I think it's a great opportunity. I think I look forward to seeing more of these happening. And there was a comment before about taking this national as well, which I think is great if that takes place. So to give a bit of an overview to the whoever's listening and watching, when it comes to innovation, developing new concepts and ideas, we've seen a lot of, I guess, democratization in the software space in development of new concepts, where you remove limitations such as logistics and manufacturing, which are always going to be a tricky part. There's been opportunities in software to set up a base of operation anywhere you want. That's great, and we here in Brisbane in particular, we've seen a wave in the past 3-4 years of this new wave of innovation entrepreneurship. We're seeing this again nationally with different states playing a role, and the focus has been a lot on the software side, and simply because it's easy to set it up. But having said that, hardware is critical. So if you're looking at software, AI, data management, that's the brain, but you need the body for that implementation. There's a lot of innovation that we need in the world we interact with, in transport, in medical, in energy, and these elements have a hardware component. So when I talk about hardware, I talk about anything physical, anything in 3D. It can be in plastics, it can be in metals, it can be in electronics. And what we've done at ARC is set up this facility with as much of a concentration as possible of key resources in equipment and know-how to bring that development process for new IP innovation in hardware as close to software as possible. So to replicate what a laptop does and a computer does, we needed to set up 20, 30 machines. So there are 3D printers, some that do certain types of plastics, which are great for your prototyping. Some are for end use. We've got a big machine that does meter by meter prints. There's electronics prototyping. I'm right now in the media lab, So there's audio visual recording equipment in here as well. There's a design lab with the CAD 3D modeling software available, an assembly lab as well. So all these resources here are there to help lower that financial barrier in engaging with the technology, right? It's not one machine that does everything. You need a little bit of everything. And so it makes sense to have a central location where a number of different innovative companies can interact with the resources. Now, that is one stage of the process. The other one is the whole pathway, the whole commercialization strategy, how we then bring in mentoring and industry engagement and help, at least map the best possible outcome for a startup, an SME looking at developing your product. So the first thing that comes to mind, and it's the first point of potential some mistakes that companies make, is make sure that you're solving a problem. So you're designing a product that has a need. That's probably number one aspect. And it's easy. You don't have to have developed a prototype first. You can get a quite comprehensive amount of information out of your particular target audience, and make sure you are specific in your questioning. So what we see a lot of the time is early stage companies looking at developing new product and saying, yes, we've talked to people, they said it's awesome. Great, that bears very little weight. You want to make sure that your potential target audience and market understand what you're doing, are actually potentially, the question is, will you actually buy it? How much would you pay for it? Would you pre-order it now? If not, why? And make sure you collect their data so you can cross-reference that later. That is important both for the personal development of the proper strategy and business plan, but also it's one of the key things that an investor looks at. So when you're looking at investment money and raising capital, validation is key. After validation, at least a certain amount of validation, you'll reach a point where you're going to need to actually develop the product itself, right? So there's going to be a limit. And also in the initial phase, one thing that comes to mind a lot of the times, and I'll touch on it briefly. So my background, for example, is in law and specifically intellectual property from an educational perspective. And so there's always this notion, what can I disclose? I want to protect or develop my concept first before I go out. The general answer is 80% of the time, it's better to disclose information than not to disclose. You obviously need to know your audience and their capabilities and potentially taking advantage of your idea. But most of the time, you need that data to begin with. You want to make sure you're not spending thousands of dollars protecting an IP that then it turns out nobody wants. And that's actually very common. And an issue as well that comes there is you can't find potential co-founders or collaborators because you're too focused on restricting the amount of information that you're giving out. The thing to bear in mind briefly, and when it comes to IP, is IP it doesn't protect the solution to a problem. It protects exactly how you are solving it. So you can get away a lot of the time by really explaining what you're solving in the general sense, and that still opens certain doors. So that's kind of step one. And after you do that, step two is how can you develop a functional prototype to demonstrate what you're developing in the most efficient and affordable way possible. So I'm just checking in case, Ross, can everyone see the graph that I have on the screen at the moment?
Yeah, the grey and orange, yep, with the startup awesome. Journey, yeah. All
right, so I'm not sure, can they see the mouse as well when it hovers or just the image?
Move your mouse. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so pretty much when I talk about that validation stage, it really fits in the new hardware startup, right? Right at the beginning, you want to validate your concept. Now, if you look at the top here, there's funding, and on the bottom, there's industry network. So as far as ARC is concerned and what we do, in the center panel, where you see design, prototyping, refinement and testing, marketing and media, and tooling and production, that's really where the core expertise and assistance and engagement with resources happen within ARC. We don't provide direct funding, but we're well linked to and well connected to accelerator programs, angel investors, VCs, and that's where investment comes at the top. And at the bottom, that's where key industry partnerships with service providers, industry partners with key expertise in different segments come into play to really map out that whole pathway. So once you're actually there, you've actually validated your concept. You've asked, depending on whether it's a consumer-based product where you might want to ask 50 to 100 people, or if it's a business-to-business product where you have a large client that then with a large workflow and opportunity after that, where you might ask 10 to 20 companies. That initial data is critical. Now with that data, what you want to do is you want to get to that pre-seed funding. Now pre-seed is usually between $10,000 to $50,000, and there's two avenues usually to get that money. It can be family and friends, so it can also be your personal money. And one thing I want to emphasize is this pathway here that I'm showing you showcases opportunities to develop a concept in the most efficient and affordable way possible and de-risking the whole process. It also showcases how you can do things without putting your own or a lot of your money in the first place, which is a big misconception. Having said that, even if you have the money available, you don't have to spend it inefficiently. So again, that's why this process is important. So pre-seed, 10 to 50K. So an accelerator is usually a 3-month program. It can be longer. There's some funding attached to it in most occasions, but to get in, you need to have validated the product and have a working prototype to demonstrate the capability. The chicken and the egg issue is that usually to get that amount of money, that 10 to 50K, you need 10 to 50K to develop the actual prototype. This is not the MVP final product. This is the early stage concept. And that is an issue. It's depending on the level, it blocks a lot of potential talented teams to fully test their idea. So that's where a space like ARC comes into play, and with a membership model where you have access to $500,000 worth of resources, and if you're a startup, $500 a month for your team, you can engage with it, right? We've got pricing for startups and SMEs and corporates really to help the different companies at different stages of development in the best possible way. But that showcases that you can achieve the same outcome of 10 to 50K worth of funds. You can with 1/10 of that budget, 1 to 5K, you can achieve the same outcome. That's obviously on top of the resources. There's assistance with staff and mentors to fill those gaps. So that process varies. That can take between probably 3 to 6 months, depending on the complexity of the project, depending on if you're full-time or if you're part-time. Depending if it has a lot of electronic capabilities, or if it's just mechanical, or if it's a medical device. That's really where that timing comes into play. But once you tick that box, there's plenty of opportunity in the pre-seed to get that initial capital to refine your product, make sure it's got the perfect market fit, and get ready for that MVP pre-production model. So at the moment, when we talk about accelerators, there is a lot. Here in Brisbane, there's 11 happening in Brisbane. Nationwide, is probably easily 20, 25 or so. And although the name is consistent, an accelerator, bear in mind that some are pre-accelerators, some are post. I'm sure, Ross, you probably you provided information on what ACS is doing with the more scaling version of the accelerator.
Yeah, I'll touch on that later. Yep, absolutely.
Cool. So with that, that's usually a great opportunity to do business development and engage with potential customers. And so you got your prototype, you can go engage with industry. Now you have a much more refined level of feedback. You still ask the same questions around validation as I mentioned before, but this time with a physical product that you can demonstrate. Now, you can demonstrate this product, but you can't fully test it, right? Because a prototype that you're spending $1 to $5K on is still quite limited. Then you use these resources that you get out of this pre-seed pool of funding, and you focus on the refinement and testing. So we have early stage prototyping tools, but we also have more advanced ones. There's machines that print in carbon fiber. There's machines that do like a 1 meter by 1 meter prints, that do resin, that do a high-end electrical testing. So you're looking at transitioning from just something that demonstrated works to something that can be given to a client, closely resembles the end-use product, and we can really collect refined and accurate data. The other key thing that that teams focus at this stage would be the presentation side. So this is something that we lack in general. We're not as good as in Australia as potentially startups in the States, where there it's more about the selling part. Here it's more about we want to make sure that the thing works. Now, if you look at which one is better, now for the longevity theoretically of the product, making sure that it works well, it's functional is key. But if you can't attract the right amount of funding to get it that way, then you're going to be falling short. While on the other side, if you oversell something and just get a bucket load of money in, then you can find a way to solve the problem. You won't do it as efficiently, but you can find a way. We're very risk adverse here in Australia. It's really hard to find experienced investment in hardware, and so you'll find a necessity to be more structured. And having said that, focusing on how does the product look, how can we focus on the media side, on the presentation side is key. Hence why we have a media lab, we have resources allocated to that, is to really create that portfolio. Being able to translate your vision, your idea, your product as clearly, as efficiently as possible. So don't get stuck into the technicality of the product. Make sure that you're answering the key questions. What is the problem that you're solving? How you're achieving that? How are you unique? How strong is your team? That's something that is important on your business development process, but also in your messaging. So you'll see these stages, while in the early stage, probably in the prototyping, you start engaging with maybe help around IP, certain checklists around R&D and strategy and setting up a company. Once you go in refinement and testing in marketing media, you start now looking at, okay, manufacturing, industry connections, and partnerships, right? That's from an industry perspective. Now, once you've actually got something that resembles your end product, you've got a beta customers that have been testing your product for a couple of months. Now you're ready to go into production. And this is another thing that until recently, you had to have all this amount of money up front. So you needed hundreds of thousands of dollars to cover your protection of IP internationally, your tooling, your production run, your prototyping initially, and then hoping that people are actually going to buy your product. And if things go well, good. You still have to find that money to begin with. If things don't go as planned, it's a problem. Now in seed funding is that amount of money that helps you cover that bulk of costs. So while you can use pre-seed for your provisional patent, that gives you 12 months, 12 months of time to gather more funds before you file protection of IP internationally. With a seed, you're starting to using those funds to apply for international patents, tooling, production. Now, where are you going to get that money from? So you can get that from angel investment. You get that from a crowdfunding if it's a B2C product. If it's angel, usually B2B is what they like. There's also equity crowdfunding, which is new. It's just come out. So you not only can you sell your products or reward-based crowdfunding, but you can also sell or give out equity. It can also be, there's certain accelerators, larger ones, international ones that provide more funding in this area, specifically around hardware and IoT. And also government grants come into play. So an example, locally, there's the Ignite grant here out of Queensland that helps you go from, helps you scale, helps you go from initial engagement to a higher volume engagement within nationwide or internationally. But there's also federal level grants there. With that fund, with that amount, you can then go into proper tooling and production. So at that stage, you're actually delivering those products. And again, it can be complicated if you don't have the right contacts. So where do you manufacture? What do you manufacture locally? What do you manufacture internationally? What are the logistical implications, regulatory implications? What are the best markets to engage with? So that's again where we come in, and we rely a lot on our network and our partners to filter through key information and share that with the startups. So to give you an overview of manufacturing, at the end of the day, if it's high volume consumer goods, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to be manufacturing in Australia anytime soon. If it's low volume, high quality, you can rely on advanced manufacturing. So defense, aerospace, medical, these are great spaces where it doesn't really matter where you are. You can rely on technology that will keep you competitive. And so the general rule, regardless of either you're developing a mass market product or a high-end medical product, there is no limit in the creation of IP. All right, and this is what I think I just want to make sure that you understand. Developing with the right resources, the right networks, talking to the right people, and we'll talk, I'm sure, in the Q&A more about this. How do you engage with people? How do you network? How do you fill certain gaps? But there's spaces like there's ARC, there's ACS, there's networking opportunities to fill those gaps. There's resource opportunities to fill those gaps. So making sure that you give your best chance at something is important. It's better to dedicate a full month on a project and with all the dedicated resources on than taking 6 years and kind of figuring things out. So that's an important thing. And if you do that, you can see if there's an opportunity. There's no failure is not an issue. And one of the key things that we focus on is providing the infrastructure to be able to identify the opportunity in a product, pivot if necessary, and potentially also change completely, but do that in as short of a period as possible and as cheaply as possible. So things shouldn't take 12, 24 months and tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars just to figure out if there is a good potential. They should take a fraction of that. So that's a key element around giving the best shot and having that efficiency there. And usually once you, go into production, so manufacturing, there's some key players that we deal with locally. There's a a strong movement around reshoring. There's a lot of efficiency through automation, robotics, data management, where factories here are becoming more efficient. So that's a key. And that helps on the IP front, on the quality control front, but it really depends on the product that you're developing. Then we have key contacts and networks with international parties. So whether you're tapping into a market or going to large-scale manufacturing, potential contacts in Asia or Europe or the States are critical. And usually once you tick all these boxes, you figure out the logistical pathways, regulatory pathways, and then you have your first batch of clients and data. That's where you can finally go to a Series A and VC capital. And that's really the amount of funding that is going to scale your business. And that's kind of the pathway. And usually we have companies engaged in the early stage of the funding side, in the medium stage, up until, and sometimes in between seed and Series A. Usually once you reach Series A, you have enough opportunity funding to set up your own space, potentially acquire some technology in. But sometimes we engage with larger companies as well, where they might not need a technology all the time. And this is another thing I'll touch briefly. I hope I'm going well with time, Ross. Let me know how I'm going as well.
All good, mate. But still only halfway through, so you got a bit. No, all good.
Yeah. So I'll at least at this level. So the when it comes to corporate engagement, larger companies are finding themselves to try to be a lot more efficient, looking at the bottom line a lot more. There's a lot more competition, and they need to be more lean. So there's two things. So what we've seen is one, an engagement and an interest in use of resources, because you can have this fantastic R&D facility, but and spend all this money, but if it doesn't have a strong return on investment, then that's an issue. The other key thing is around engagement between the corporate level and the startup level, because a larger company understands that they need to be more innovative. They can tackle maybe one or two projects at a time, and it's always hard to, develop something that doesn't strictly adhere to the core business, which sometimes is necessary. But engaging with more dynamic startups, being aware of what opportunities are there in terms of talent, in terms of technology, opens parameters of networking and engagement and collaboration. And this is again where a space like ARC, where again opportunities to collaborate with ACS come into play to create this link. So sometimes you find that you're very early on and you need these key contacts in industry, and on the other side is a company that really has a problem, has a need, usually these two segments are completely isolated. We're trying to really bring them together, and one of the key things I want to do more of is really understanding companies' pain points and finding ways to get those key pain points publicly displayed within the ecosystem, so that different types of startups and companies actually see it. So there's issues in data management, there's issues in data collection, there's issues in sensor technology, and likewise from a startup perspective, showcasing that there's potential opportunities of networking in different market segments and contacts to industry. So that's kind of the overview of what we do and how we fit. But I can go into more depth around certain programs and things that we see of use between startups and corporates. But I want to make sure that Ross, we're good, and if there's any, at what point we're going to have a Q&A and things like that.
Yeah, look, really good. And really cleared it up from my perspective on the process. I think it's been a bit disjointed. And yeah, everyone, please send your questions through the Q&A function. Love to get them answered. And to kind of touch on what you were saying, Victor, yeah, so from an ACS perspective, I'm not sure if you've seen, but, and you've had the opportunity to have a tour at the new office as well. So ACS opened a new national office in Barangaroo in Sydney a few months ago. Part of that is a potentially scale accelerator where we're looking at taking startups where they're at the point of growing and employing and putting them through accelerator programs so that with the vision to keep the IP in Australia, keep the skills in Australia and grow jobs for Australia. Because right now, especially within this startup space and IT and technology professionals across the board, we see a culture of transition. So a lot of people finish uni, a lot of people get to the business to a point where it's working, and then they go overseas. We need to create and support an ecosystem here that encourages them to stay, to keep that IP, to keep the skill, and to keep the businesses here so that we can grow those jobs for the economy. So on a bigger picture, that's kind of where ACS is going, and obviously why we've looked at partnering with ARC. And to take it back a step too, Australia Computer Society, we were founded on building hardware 50 years ago. So to me and Victor, it kind of made common sense that we should look at this hardware side of the startup space. And you know, my discussions with a lot of clients and industry when I'm out is this is absolutely a prototyping factory. And I've seen it before. To prototype any product in Australia, you're looking at what, 30 to 50K just to even get a basic level prototype before you're refining it and testing it even and looking at a final product. So the facility that you've got there, Victor, is absolutely amazing. And for everyone online, it's actually the first one in Australia. So Queensland, everyone in Queensland and members of ACS, you get the first in Australia to get involved with this startup space. So absolutely encourage you to do so. Yeah, but we're good for time. What else have you got? Anything other exciting stuff?
No, I've got plenty. I can give a bit of an overview as well of the type of companies that we're engaging with, the startups. Yeah. So I guess this next section here, I just want to think so one of the key things, if you can see out of this little graphic, but this is just a selection criteria for the members getting involved in ARC. And what we've done is set up a facility where we want to make sure there's a high quality in technology and knowledge and also obviously in the startups. So we have this criteria where we say, look, we want to see teams that are working on a commercial project. There are some maker spaces or hacker spaces around. Usually there are in different capital cities. They're usually volunteer run. They're great for community engagement and education, but they really lack on the commercialization side. And this is really why this space is unique. So we also offer group memberships. So whether it's one person or 3 people, it's exactly the same costing. And the reason why we do this is to promote having that diversity of skills. In the startup scene, we say you need a balanced team of a hacker, a hipster, and a hustler. So a hacker is your technical person. The engineer or the coder, software developer, right? The person that actually makes the thing work. Then you have the hipster, which is the designer. That person makes it look good, so graphic industrial. And then you have the hustler, which is the business person. So sales, business development. So this is important because, and the way we set up this space as well, it's very corporate compatible. There's a low technical barrier to engaging with the technology, but there's a high capability output. And I'll show some examples in a second. But it's important because you want to make sure you have all these skill sets involved early on and throughout the process. Now, you might have these 3 skill sets in 1 person, in 3, in 5. It doesn't really matter, but it's important to identify where those gaps are. So going back to the criteria, we're looking for commercial projects a problem has been identified and a solution has been is in the works, the technical capabilities of delivering that solution exist. This is not a technical expertise. There's a lot of ways where we can help in terms of internally with the resources, but also connecting to possible collaborators, freelancers, co-founders. But it's important that you identify what gaps are there and how you fill them. And then obviously, this is linked to the validation side, having identified a valid market opportunity. And that's why we sit down and we strategize and we look at what opportunities are available. If that criteria is met, then a company can become a member of ARC. It's independent. That company is independent enough to make the most out of the resources. So you're not going around in circles. Having said that, we also keep a door open for those instances where there are some gaps in the skill sets. And I will really briefly go through this if it loads. It might be an issue with, there you go. So this is just a very briefly an outline of the programs that we run, and this sits on the side of the incubator. So the non-commercial ones, which is the gray ones, those are for those pre-incubators. So you might need to understand more of the process or engage with co-founders, find collaborators, learn how you properly validate your concept. So we can organize educational workshops, meetup groups, opportunities like this of a webinar are great. Startup weekends, these are very concentrated 54-hour events where anyone can come, pitch an idea. You usually pitch your type B or C idea, so it's not your primary one. And you identify what the problem is, what your solution is, who you need on your team. Now, you might have 40, 50, 60 people attend, or 100 people. There's been some that are quite large. And after you've pitched, the top 10 ideas get selected. Everyone else joins those 10 teams. And throughout that weekend, you work in a team to validate, prototype, prepare for your pitching on your Sunday, and then you get judges and panels. So again, a good opportunity to fill in those gaps on the startup level. Then when you're more advanced and you're actually part of a team and you tick those boxes for the incubator, you can get involved in hackathons. So the ones that we focus on are more matchmaking. So key industry players in industry with key problems, and then we engage with more advanced startups with technology that can either be adjusted or modified or reskinned to solve those issues. So it's a strict connection between a problem and a solution and implementation. But then there's pre-accelerators that focus on product development, and post that focus on manufacturing and logistics. So having said that, let's talk about a few of the startups that are involved with the space to give you perspective what projects can be done here, what is hardware, what are some examples. They vary significantly. So we probably engage with, since launch, which is end of February of this year, we've had 30, 35 startups that we've engaged with in different capacity for a period of time. The more advanced ones are currently active at the moment, around about 14 to 15, and probably a bit higher now, I have to double check. And the technology varies. So we have, I'll show you some examples here. Not sure how the quality of the video is. So this one here, it's pretty much a shell at the moment. The startup has which they're not in here today. We'll probably have a webinar on them as well at some point, because they're actually going quite strong, and they won a national award around design recently as well. But this one here is it's a shell for a digital tape measure. And it's a connected device, IoT. All the internal components, which would have been injection molded, have been manufactured using 3D printing, high quality, high resolution. So what's missing out of this part here are the electronics and the screen. So the board, the battery, and the screen. A lot of the prototyping on that has been done in the electronics lab on the electronics side. The assembly and manufacturing has been done here. And now this startup called Osiris, they're getting ready to go on crowdfunding. They're doing a trial with the Department of Fisheries for their technology. And that's actually very interesting as well. I'll make a point. So talking about that hackathon model, so taking an existing technology or at least opening problems to more advanced dynamic companies that either can adopt their existing tech or slightly modify it to fix that problem. So this startup here, they originally designed their product for the design, so the fashion, medical, and sports industry. So body measurements mainly. And the actual, it's useful, the data is recorded automatically on an app. It's got a retractable thread, which makes it easy to go around curves. And recently, the Advanced Queensland released some challenges through this program called Testing in Government, where they said, look, these are issues that certain departments in government have. We're going to provide some funding to do some proper testing. And we want to see dynamic and advanced startups apply. And one of the challenges was around measuring fish. So the Department of Fisheries has to measure here in Queensland 10,000 fish a year, something like that, and they still use a ruler, a pen and paper, and it's very, I guess, archaic. Now, there's certain elements of there's vision that can play a role, and the team at Osiris also has a series of skills there. But depending on the type of, when the measurements take place, the fish may be fully frozen, and so they might have a curve, and vision has issues. So you need a combination of a hardware element with the internal processing and vision together. So that's one example. Another one is Canaria, which will coordinate a webinar soon as well with ACS. So the startup there is a wearable safe device for the mining industry. So it's for drivers of heavy equipment, and it collects data on the vital signs and has AI to predict when the peak level of fatigue is going to happen, and it can prevent accidents. Now, in the mining, initially the technology was developed for space. It was a winner of a NASA Space Challenge with the European Space Agency, and then they saw an opportunity in the mining sector, and that's why they've now focusing on this, because if an accident happens there, we're talking about millions, tens of millions of dollars. We also have manufacturing technology. So there's a fabric CNC, and they have a CNC machine that is a combination of the high capabilities of these massive multi-axis machines that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but in a format that a lot of smaller businesses can engage with. So how do they integrate the strength, the user interface? A lot of the innovation that we've seen happening in the 3D printing world hasn't really happened in CNC machining. There's Tech Print Industries, which is great. They're actually using 3D printing as an end-use manufacturing technology. So, not sure if you can kind of see these. So these are some 3D printed glasses. The whole hinges and everything has been printed. Now these are quite, I guess, bland. They're unrefined and unprocessed. But then if they go through processing and coding, this is what you get. You can't really tell that they're custom at all. Now what this company has done is an integration of hardware and software. Now they've developed a whole process where they've got a 3D scanner. A client goes in the store, needs custom eyewear. They get their face scanned in a matter of seconds, and they can fully customize and modify on the software, the shape, the style, and then they select their order, and that order is then processed and manufactured with a local manufacturing partner. So what you're seeing there is an efficiency in logistics. You don't have to carry stock as much. You don't have to worry about international shipping. Also, from a customer perspective, this high level of customization is key. So again, a combination of hardware and software there. But there's plenty. I'll just give you a brief overview. I am mindful of time as well. There's sensors for sound, for air quality control, so a few stops in that space. Education in robotics and VR are a big one. So talking about STEM and STEAM, there's a lot of focus in a new curriculum, and there are a couple of startups working in that space. What else do we have? A few drawing technologies. So there's a Drummer, which is a new startup which has developed this drone that can fly a lot more efficiently, for talking about 3-4 times its competition. And that came out of research out of university that now it's spin off in its own independent startup. There's also Iridium Dynamics, which is another type of drone technology. They've gone through a series of high-end accelerators there. So yeah, this is a bit of a framework. I hope I've given you a bit of an overview, and hopefully that helps.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely. Look, I think it's opened the eyes of the possibilities, and I think sometimes when we're in this tech space, we get a little bit lost in the advancements and what's happening, and probably sometimes don't realise what our skills as IT or tech professionals can offer this space. And I think you've really highlighted that today. And, you know, personally, I think it gives you motivation to take that first step and consider your idea, because the barriers around this space, as you've mentioned, have been, you know, been the restrictor in the growth in this area and within manufacturing in general in Australia. And, you know, that manufacturing 4.0 and the robotics, AI, all the automation coming through is absolutely where we're going from an economy perspective. And I think, you know, in Australia can get us back on that global scale for a manufacturing destination. And we can actually compete with China and some of those other more competitive nations. So, look, has anybody got any questions? Because normally you've got lots. Today you haven't. I think you've either shocked them, given them something really new to think about, but you've also been, in my eyes, quite comprehensive in your overview. And I think planting that seed's been the critical point today. And I think just on that, look, I want everyone to reach out to me if they absolutely have an idea or want to get involved in this space. How that looks, Victor and I are still discussing at the back end so that we make sure the experience is positive and it's all outcome focused. If we were just to let you loose in ARC, you know, that the outcomes may not be as strong and you may not meet the right people. So both Victor and I are very, very committed to making this work. And as you can see in the ARC strategy, engagement with industry is critical. That's us. That's why we're here. You know, and we've brought this to the table to be involved with the industry, but also bring some deep skills and try and address some of those pain points that the sector's happening. Supportive ideas have started to put out. Someone's asked, is there any downloadable material, supportive ideas for this startup entrepreneur? So Victor, do you have, I suppose, resources that we could share, or do you have stuff can they go to your website to find some of this stuff?
Yeah, so there's the website overview is a good overview. We have specific in-depth documents for the programs that we run. One thing that we're looking at is doing a condensed, more sort of a checklist overview, and we're working with partners to really have that kind of nice portfolio overview. So the The short answer is things like this infographic or these graphics that I'm showing you right now, which are not publicly available, but I will have some form of these graphics go up on the website. But it will be something that we'll sort out. A kind of key intro package that covers certain aspects is something that will happen.
Absolutely, and so like you mentioned, we've got a lot of activity. We've got some activity that we're working on, yourself and I, over the next few months around. Obviously, Canary. It'd be great to get them on board and really take some of the lessons that they've learned, as well as the new on digital measurement. I think that's a really good product, and obviously solving a problem out there that industries or government is facing. So really good ones there. We're also, any events coming up from your perspective, Victor, that might be of interest to the members here?
Yeah, so the few things, I saw another question around, info on the website. The website is arc.space, fairly easy. But if there's going to be anything updated, and I'm sure I'll definitely share it with you, Ross, so you can distribute it across the channels. When it comes to key events, now we do have a key industry event happening on the 29th of August, where we're inviting the top hardware staffs within the Brisbane area to really showcase their capabilities in front of key industry representatives, or people from government and investment. That is invite only, and there's very limited spots. If there's anyone particularly keen to actually see these more advanced companies and opportunities, I'm not sure what's the best format of contact, if they can go through you or inquire some members.
Yeah. If you send me an inquiry or send me a name, and if what you're interested in, I'll liaise with Victor on the back end with this one.
So that's the shortest one. We just finished. We had a drone hackathon happening last week, and that was really tying into the World of Drone conference happening this week here. So we try to match as well events and opportunities with things that are happening in the market. Yeah. Now, upcoming programs, we are coordinating our next round of programs for the next 12, 24 months at this stage. Possibly the next one that we'll have will either be a startup weekend or a hackathon towards September or October at this stage, beyond the current pitch night that we're doing. So that's going to be the next one, but they're most likely around September. We'll be releasing some key program events for the next 12 months or so, at least as a general overview, and they will include certain boot camps or pre-accelerator programs as well. We'll go into more detail.
Yeah, awesome. That's really good, and we'll obviously keep communicating a lot of the opportunities internally. For our members, keep an eye out on our e-news, keep an eye out on our social media. We're really pushing this out quite heavily at the moment, and I suppose to kind of continue what we're doing with Victor around this is an overarching entrepreneurship series. So this flows into it. We're doing a lot around entrepreneurial thinking, mindsets, how to go about really getting into this space and how to launch your products and get a startup off the ground. So this is really just the start for us over the next 12 months or so. But I think the next big area we really wanted to work on is connecting some of those deep skills that some of the tenants might be needing. So we'll liaise and get back to all our members in regards to what that looks like and the opportunities. But what I would say is, if you've got a tech skill and you're keen to get involved, email me at this stage, so ross.medina@acs.org.au, or just reply to this email that comes out after the webinar. Drop us a line. We're just compiling that data at the moment so that we've got a central point. Some of the skills that I found in the member base. We've got an aerospace engineer who's actually a software developer within the aerospace area. Ground Probe's one of our clients that just won a Australian Financial Review Most Innovative Company. We've got AI specialists, big data specialists. You'd be surprised what type of skills the startup space is looking for. I'd say just put your hand up if you're keen, and we can look at, Victor and I will look at how that would best suit some of your tenants.
And if I could add a note there, and that's a key thing, just ask, right? So one of the key things that I find is there's this tendency, and I have to remind a lot of the staff when I have these recurrent meetings and really try to get that information out there. What are your key pain points? If you share that, you'll be surprised to how many avenues and opportunities are there. The ecosystem is really collaborative. There's really some great resources. There's some opportunities to develop things a lot quicker and cheaper than you would have thought, and things that you might have always wanted to engage with, but there's something that's preventing you from just asking that question. I need help with this. It'll be great if I could do this. And the other thing is, and this is something that we try to promote within the ecosystem, is for parties to, in conversation, also to the other party that they're talking to, after there's an overview of the different skill sets, say, how can I be of help to you? And that opens a channel of discussion. And that's kind of like a key thing that we try to kind of promote and engage, because, as I mentioned, that transfer of knowledge, that engagement opens doors a lot more efficiently than you might have thought otherwise.
Awesome. Look, really appreciate time. We're dead on one today, so well done. I know what it's like. We end up talking, and it's tough. You did well, mate. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, and look, I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can work with ARC over the next 12 months. And from what's coming out already, there's some amazing opportunities to work together, collaborate, and get our members involved. Like I said, reach out, everyone. There's heaps we're going to be doing. But more so, just Victor, thanks for your time, mate. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your resources and your oversight into the industry, because it is fresh and different to what I've seen out there.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much.
No worries. Take care, everyone. We'll talk soon. And Victor, have a good day, mate. We'll talk soon.
Okay, cheers.
Bye.